It's the Ask JP podcast with JP Morrell. Now, let's start the show. Here's JP.
Welcome to the Ask JP podcast, where we interview new and different people about the questions of the day. I'm here with my co-host, Monet, as well as our guest, Miss Tammy Savoie, who is a candidate for District 26, correct, Monet?
No, 23.
23. See, there you go. Already I'm messing up. All right, 23. So, Monet, why don't you tell us about District 23?
Yes, well, it's not totally your bad because this is a new House district for people that don't know. With the new census, Orleans Parish population shifted and we were able to gain a new House seat in the state legislature. So this is my new House district, so I have a personal investment in this as well. So if you live in Mid-City, Bayou St. John, Holly Grove, City Park area, this is your new House district. So, yeah, and here we have Dr. Tammy Savoie, and we're going to discuss some of the issues we have for this upcoming election. So let's start. Have a couple of just quick questions intro. Tammy, why do you decide to run for the state legislature? What makes you the best candidate? What do you see as the needs of this new constituency? I just threw a lot at you, but.
Yeah, I do want to make a clarification before we get started in terms of how we got the new district, okay? Because it didn't just shift, population shifted in Louisiana, but in New Orleans, it grew. And It grew to the amount of about 44,000 people, which is enough for a new state house district. And so they put it specifically in Mid-City, and the rest of the neighborhoods, Holly Grove, Dixon, Gertown, Faubourg St. John, a little in Gentilly, up to Tulane Gravia. And so that's our new district, and I am happy to be running for that district. So my name, and I'm going to answer all your questions, but I think I'm going to reserve the needs of the constituency for one of your later questions. I'm going to combine it, okay? So I'm going to answer the first two, why I'm running and what makes me the best candidate for the job. So everybody, my name is Tammy Savoie, and I'm running to represent the good people of District 23, the heart of New Orleans. So I'm running not only for my daughter, who is getting married on November 3rd, and the grandchildren I hope to have someday. I'm running so that everybody's daughter and son can grow up in a city that is safe, with affordable housing, working infrastructure, responsive leadership, and economic prosperity. Now, I've been a public servant all my life, and I want to continue to be a public servant in the Louisiana State House, serving the good people of District 23. So the race is deeply personal for me because I was born and raised in New Orleans. I love our city. I love our district. I'm a clinical psychologist and a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel. And this is what makes it so personal, because during the wars, I deployed both to Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, I put on the flak vest, I strapped on the sidearm, and I puddle jumped to forward operating bases across these countries to make sure that our troops had the medical services that they needed. And then back at the Pentagon, I wrote policy along with my coworkers and colleagues that ensured that our troops would continue to have the medical and mental health services that they needed. And I feel like I will do no less for the citizens of our district, our city, and our state. And I feel that they all deserve what we have for our armed force service members. We just deserve this. And I believe I can do the same for our citizens. So based on my extensive policy experience, writing, implementing, and evaluating healthcare policy for the Secretary of Defense, and as a Chief of International Health or Air Force Central Command, and based on my business experience as a program manager and branch chief at the European Office of Aerospace Research and Development, I believe that I have unique qualifications that make me the best candidate to fight the good fight for the good citizens of District 23.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great intro. It leads into a couple of other questions. Why don't we just get to the meat and potatoes? So what is your stance on abortion? And please be specific, because as you know, we're in the South and Democrats kind of give like abortion with an asterisk. So just kind of just generally speaking, what's your stance on abortion, and why do you think that reflects the stance of the people in your district?
Oh, this does definitely reflect the stance of the people in my district, because I've talked to, I've canvassed over 6,000 people in my district. I've talked at many forums, but anyway, I'm pro-choice, and I will fight for a woman's right to choose an abortion in accordance with the principles of Roe v. Wade, which is, access to abortion unfettered from conception to viability, which is about 22 to 24 weeks. And after that, the woman has the right to choose an abortion at any time during her pregnancy to protect her life and her health. And each patient, in consultation with her physician, has the right to determine the best medical procedures and practices in regard to her reproductive health and abortion. So all women should have the right, regardless of income level or age, to access safe, legal, confidential, and affordable abortion and reproductive health care. And women of limited financial resources should have a right to public funding for family planning and abortion services. This should be included in all insurance policies. And there should be no waiting period to obtain an abortion. So to help with unwanted pregnancies or unplanned pregnancies, comprehensive, medically accurate, age-appropriate sex education should be provided to students. FDA-approved emergency contraceptive should be offered without delay to all victims of rape or incest in all hospitals, all clinics. And FDA-approved emergency contraceptive should be provided in accordance with appropriate dispensing regulations without delay or obstruction to all women at all pharmacies in the United States. Now, given the current makeup of the Louisiana State Legislature, I will attempt to mitigate any further harm until abortion rights become legal again. I will fight for exceptions to the abortion ban: life, physical health of the mother, rape, incest. I will fight to have the abortion pill available for medical interventions as needed, and abortions available for medical complications such as ectopic pregnancies and other non-viable pregnancies. And I'll fight to have the abortion pill immediately available after rape or incest. I'll also fight for the non-prosecution of medical personnel who are just doing their jobs and protecting their patients who are experiencing pregnancy complications. And I'll fight against any effort to criminalize anyone who attempts to get a legal abortion out of state and anyone who assists them. And I will fight against any efforts to obtain a woman's medical records, regardless of any procedures they are pursuing out of state. So in a nutshell, that's my stance on abortion.
Well, I mean, before we get to that question, Monet,
go ahead.
I think it's interesting. Like, I'm sure you followed the legislature. Sex ed has been a battle that we've been having even before Roe v. Wade was repealed.
Yeah.
And do you perceive like any different tacks you could take as someone who's a healthcare professional on how you try to convince your colleagues that sex ed is important? Because we are still a state that lives in the 1950s, and for the most part, it's sex is bad, abstinence works. That's it. That's pretty much their. That's pretty much their. I mean, Governor Blanco was probably the biggest proponent of abstinence-only education, and it was a fight we had constantly. So I'm just, as a medical professional, I think you might be in a position to like give us kind of what a new track looks like.
Well, I would say that, we teach all of the physiological systems. We teach the respiratory system. We teach the skeletal system. We teach the muscular system. We must teach the reproductive system. And when teaching the reproductive system, we can teach about sex education, because that's, the reproductive system is designed for two people to have sex, and how we and when you have sex, there's potential to get pregnant. And so we can start there Okay, with this is a biological, physiological system in our bodies that we need to know about, in the same way that we need to know about the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the skeletal system, the muscular system. So that's where I would start.
Okay. I appreciate that. I did not have sex ed. I don't think I went to Dominican, and I know you did too, Tammy. And so my sex ed experience was abysmal. I'm not sure if yours was any different, but we definitely need to work on that.
We did have the reproductive system in biology. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think everyone should have, I mean, at the very least, you should know how your system works, your reproductive system works in both the female and the male, and how pregnancies happen. And then we had religious classes that we discussed sexual relations in the context of relationships. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I just think it needs to be more comprehensive and maybe also give us a little more information. And then you also have to address LGBTQ issues. And, we have to do that. Kids, you can't not discuss that in today's age, because kids have the internet, they have all of these social media. The kids are going to discuss this, whether we like it or not. Whether adults like it or not. And so the best thing to do is for adults to be a part of that conversation and to guide and mentor and be compassionate with our children as they come of age.
Absolutely. And you mentioned LGBTQ rights, which is a perfect segue into our next question. How do you see the lay of the land right now in Louisiana in terms of queer rights?
Well, it is a very scary and precarious time for anyone who is LGBTQ or plus. Okay. So the 2023 legislative session saw a slate of hate towards the LGBT community. And, we have the story of the gay pediatrician specialist leaving our state because he's afraid for his family. This is terrible. So I will advocate for LGBTQ youth and adults, all, particularly inclusion in our schools. School is supposed to be a place where kids go to socialize, have fun, learn, and it can be a pretty damaging place, destructive place for LGBTQ kids. And we have to have inclusion. We have to not get over this bathroom ban and things of that nature. Going to the bathroom is a really big deal for trans kids, and it can cause them to drop out of school. And so we really have to be a little bit more compassionate and come up with solutions for that. Okay. And they're not that difficult to come up with. And so I would advocate for that. I support legislation that provides comprehensive health education in public schools that includes medically accurate, age-appropriate information about LGBT information, about sexuality. We have to discuss this. And so I also oppose censorship of reading materials in libraries and schools, including those centered on race, history, sexual orientation, gender. I also support adoption of policies in school that respect a student's gender identity, using the kid's preferred name and pronoun. I would ban, legislatively, conversion therapy for minors. And conversion therapy is this discredited practice of forcing young people to deny their sexual orientation or gender identity. It's very aversive. Okay, it's an aversive kind of therapy that if a child thinks they're gay, then it uses techniques to kind of dampen that orientation or suppress that orientation, and it's very damaging. So I would support legislation that prohibits licensed mental health practitioners or anybody from subjecting minors to conversion therapy practices. And I support additional public funding for HIV prevention, testing, and treatment facilities. Those are some of the things that I would do to support the LGBTQ community.
Awesome.
But before the next one, I think it's really interesting. So I've got 3 kids, and they've been to a variety of different schools. They've been to public schools, they've been to private schools, they've been to Catholic schools. And to your point, it's so interesting how these really oppressive efforts to restrict certain behavior do not end the behavior. Like, I think there's this misconception publicly in Louisiana, like, if we just don't talk about gay people, we don't talk about transgender kids, our kids can't become one. And not only is that not true, the amount of destructive and bullying and awful behavior that takes place in institutions that are trying to curb it really creates a bad environment for all kids. Absolutely. And right now, my oldest is kind of at the end of his school hopping trails at Benjamin Franklin, which is possibly the most inclusive school on earth. And having gone to all these schools, it's interesting when you talk to him, he's like, Dad, it's so weird when you walk through a hallway and no one's being bullied. And it's weird because you're like, wait, like, you've been through so much PTSD through the schools you've been through with these kind of like rubber band effects with like how they treat these issues, that when you put them in an environment where you just let kids just be accepting, it's jarring. And I mean, that's kind of an indictment on how the state treats education and socialization of children. I mean, if you just say kids, everyone treat everyone equally, the golden rule, it really creates a flourishing environment where I guarantee you there aren't more kids at Franklin and other schools that subscribe or have different sexual orientations. It's just the environment's different where they can express themselves. And it's done so in a healthy way where they don't grow up damaged because they're in environments that pretend like if we repress it, we bully, we do hate speech, it'll somehow like purge society of it. So I just want to add that commentary just because, like, to your point, and also I had a sex ed thought go through my head. I was like, it's so interesting how they treat sex ed at all boys schools versus all girl schools, because I remember my oldest going through sex ed at an all boy Catholic school, and it was pretty in depth. Like, and yet there's this idea that even like the kind of aggressive sexism of like, we got to tell those girls less because they'll just go out there and start wanting to have sex. But they're actively telling the boys, don't do this stuff because you will have babies. It's like a generational, like, straight line of the sexism that's inherent kind of in systems. Amen. That was an observation when we're talking sex ed, because I was like, man, my oldest sex ed at an all boys school was very thorough comparatively. So.
All right. Let's kind of switch gears. Tammy, you mentioned your background in psychology, and so I'm interested in your answering this next question. What do you see as your role in the state legislature in addressing crime issues, specifically here in New Orleans?
Okay, so crime is, there are so many different reasons for crime, but I think that we need a comprehensive strategy to address the crime in our city and our state. And so to include, okay, and as a legislature, let me just kind of give you my thoughts on it. Okay, first, we need to really start teaching our kids and implementing conflict resolution classes that teach individuals, especially young folks, how to resolve conflict without violence. and implementing. We need to do that across the spectrum and start when they're young all the way up. And implementing, we need to implement our current laws. Mostly we need to reduce poverty and the stress associated with poverty and racism, misogyny, and lack of opportunity. Those things all cause crime. And we have some legislative solutions that we could try to implement, okay? So to tackle the underlying causes of crime, okay? Poverty, particularly childhood poverty, we can raise the minimum wage. It is stuck at $7.25. And most of the 2/3 of the people that earn minimum wages are women. And so that means that women and children are more often in poverty than single males or males with families. So one of the things we can do easily, raise the minimum wage. The other thing we can do is have a state expanded child tax credit. And we saw during the pandemic, we reduced the childhood poverty rate down to 5.2% because we expanded the federal child tax credit, and that has expired. And we have now seen a spike in child poverty up to 8%, but 12 something percent. And so, and it's ridiculous because we have an increase in poverty, but we have everybody almost has a job. We have almost, we have the highest rate of employability than we've had in years. I mean, at one point we reached the lowest unemployment rate in the history of our country, but yet we have this high poverty rate. So we have to do more. Holding a job is not enough not to be in poverty, and that is ridiculous. So raising the minimum wage and expanding, and about 13 states have expanded the state child tax credit. And most of those are blue states, but even a couple of conservative states have seen the benefits of expanding the child tax credit to reduce poverty. And when you reduce poverty, you reduce the stress and you reduce crime. And that's something we can do tomorrow. It's not going to take a whole generational change. This will change tomorrow. The other thing is affordable housing. This is a crisis, and part of that is the insurance rates, and I think we're going to talk about that later on, and utilities, and I think we're going to talk about that as well. So those kind of things, the underlying causes of crime. And then we have the lack of opportunity, lack of skills. So education is really important as it relates to crime. Starting young, universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds, and also building skills and technical training centers in our high schools. And I just was at some seminar where we have this new technical training school here in our city, and it's going to be fantastic. And we're going to grow a whole population, a whole new generation of technically trained kids that are going to have job skills when they go out. And we have a dearth of skilled laborers in our city. And so this is going to help out a lot, and that will help with crime. We need to increase the economic prosperity in our city. That will also reduce crime. We don't want kids to rely on service level jobs for the rest of their lives. And if this is what they have to look forward to, it's not great. And sometimes, when you're not happy, when you're stressed because you can't afford things, crime ensues. But things like we have this bio district that's being developed in our mid-city area, all the way from, it's going to revamp the 2-lane corridor, and all of our universities are involved in it. It's going to be great, and we need to invest in that. We have the film industry here, 4th in the nation behind California, New York, and Atlanta. We don't have any film studios here. That would be great. That would create high-paying jobs. So that would be another thing that we can invest in. Sustainable energy, because we can lead, and this can be another source of skilled labor. And we have the technology here in Louisiana to build this sustainable energy economic movement. And we can do that. I mean, we have sun, we have rain, we have a little bit of wind in the Gulf, but we have these new windmills now that will that are better with the low amount of wind that we have in the Gulf. So this is good. And we have the skills here in the southern Louisiana to build the infrastructure for windmills. So we have so much to offer, but we're just kind of stuck in the past. We also need to address the mental health crisis that we have. Of course, this is particularly pertinent to me because this is the area that I've worked in. So we need community mental health centers all over the state, but we have a dearth of providers and it takes a long time to grow providers. So we really need creative solutions. And we came up with that when I was in the military. When we were out in Afghanistan, we couldn't put a mental health provider everywhere. So we did battlefield rotations. We had teams of psychiatrists, social workers, and psychologists go out as a team to the forward operating bases, provide care, and then we use telehealth as needed, and they would rotate. And we can do something like that with the rural areas that do not have mental health providers. And when we staff,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, and so when we staff our mental health clinics, we won't be able to staff them fully because we just don't have the providers in these areas. So we might staff them with administrative assistant, psych tech, and some other admin personnel, and then have our teams roll in for 2 days a month, something like that, and then do telehealth the rest of the time. These are creative solutions that we can do. And then for the drug crisis, we have, which also contributes to crime, Narcan was just made available without a prescription, which really will save lives and mitigate harm so that we can save that life after that overdose that person recovered from. And then we have these rapid fentanyl test strips that can also help prevent death. And I won't get into that. It's too much in the weeds. But anyway, regarding crime, I can't end without talking about guns, okay? And I'm a big gun sense proponent. So we need to have universal background checks with no loopholes, require training courses for anyone who owns a gun, registration of certain types of weapons, outlaw bump stocks and ghost guns, outlaw AR-15 type weapons these are weapons of war, weapons of mass murder. At the very least, if we can't get the outright ban on assault weapons, at the very least, raise the age requirement for ownership, require registration of these weapons, implement red flag laws. And this is something I did on a regular basis when I was in the military. So, people in the military, service members, they carry weapons. If you're security forces, you're guarding a flight line, you're doing something, with a weapon. Lots of people carry weapons. And I would get calls from commanders all the time saying, Tammy, I got a kid who I'm a little worried about, maybe having some marital problems or relationship problems. And I need you to look at him. So I would evaluate this kid, determine if he was safe to carry a gun, if he was having suicidal ideations, if he was having homicidal ideations, say, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'd call the commander back and say, let's do this. Let's put him off of weapons duty for right now. Let's get him some treatment. Let's address the situation he's involved in. And I'll get back to you. We'll do that for a week or two. I'll get back to you, and then we can go forward with giving him his weapon back if everything is okay. So you don't want a kid carrying a gun if he hasn't slept in 3 days because he's been having arguments at home, or she's been having arguments at home. If they have alcohol problems, they're not going on the flight line with a weapon. If they are depressed and they're having suicidal ideations, anything can happen. And so commanders had no problems calling me up and say, I need you to talk to this kid, because no commander wants to have anybody with a weapon on a base, on an installation, overseas, anywhere with a weapon who is impaired. And our goal is to make them safe and return them to duty. So I think red flag laws work, and they just need to be implemented appropriately and compassionately. Okay. So then,
Tammy, we're kind of running up on time. I want to give you an opportunity to close.
okay.
So if you have something you want to end with in the next minute or two, that would be great. Just kind of give your final pitch. I mean, Monet literally is a voter in your district. So as a voter, what would you tell your potential constituent as to like your final pitch as to why you deserve their vote?
All right, Monet. So I'll tell you, born and raised in New Orleans, I love our city, I love our district, and I will work tirelessly to improve the lives of our citizens. I will fight for the sustainability of our historic city in all of its neighborhoods, both economically and environmentally. I will fight for our safety and our health care. I will fight so that every child in our city has the opportunity and the advantages that a quality education brings. I will fight for you. So my roots are very deep in New Orleans and District 23. Both of my grandmothers were factory workers here in the district. My maternal grandmother worked at Blue Plate. My paternal grandmother worked at American Can. So we had as much mayonnaise as as we wanted, and as many bottle tops as we wanted to play with. So, when I came back from the wars and the Air Force, it was great to be back in New Orleans for good. But it was heartbreaking to see the distress in our district, our city, and our state. And I immediately got involved and went to work. So I fought for maternal and infant health care at the Capitol. I went and testified, I volunteered, I deployed with the Red Cross, and I'm still advocating and fighting. So, I will continue to do that. In addition to working on issues, I will work diligently to get to know my constituents, to get to know you, to earn your trust, to earn your respect. And I hope that I can earn your support and your vote on October 14th. My name is Tammy Savoie. My ballot is number 52. You can go to my website, tammysavoie.com, to check it out, or social media to learn more about me. And I do look forward to representing you in the Louisiana State Legislature. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was really my honor to do this and my privilege. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That concludes this episode. Well, Monet's got a smile on her face, so you got a really good chance. I'll just put that out there. But thanks for your time today. I really appreciate a lot of information, and good luck. Good luck with the primary.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.